Good morning. Fog is definitely throwing a wrench into the plans lately, but I'm just going to try to get through some things on this video. I have to keep it under 15 minutes or YouTube won't take it, so bear with me and let's talk about the song analysis assignment. I've put some new resources up on Canvas for you. You saw the call dibs the other day. If you haven't called dibs on a song yet, make sure that you do that very quickly. Make sure too that your song is appropriate for the assignment. I don't want you to struggle to write an effective analysis because you picked a song that was too simple. And so there has to be some stuff going on beneath the surface. There has to be a need for some analysis and interpretation, or you're going to have a boring essay and a not very good analysis. So song selection is really important. And as you get started with the process, if you feel like you need to change your mind, that's fine. Just go back into the call dibs section, change your post, but make sure that you're not taking something that's already been claimed by someone else. The assignment overview is here. You should have seen that the other day. We have a poetic devices for song analysis handout here that gives you language to talk about in terms of the choices that writers make in poetry to get their messages across the way that they want to. So I would encourage you to check that out and use some of that language as appropriate in your paper. Similarly, Wikipedia, I posted this to give you just basic information on song components so that you're using the terminology like chorus, verse, bridge, those things correctly. There's a sample essay here from American Songwriter Magazine about a paper, about a song called Memphis by the Milk Carton Kids. And this is a solid analysis, and you can see how they have a very focused thesis, and they prove that with evidence from the song using the lyrics. Speaking of which, the lyrics to the song Memphis are there as well. We may get to some of this Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA stuff in class next week. We'll see how that goes. Let's take a look at the assignment sheet. I'm not going to read this to you on video. That would be painful for all involved. But I do want to point out some key things and stop and talk about some things that might need a little bit more explanation. So remember what our purpose is for this paper. Okay, that's laid out here in the motive section. Then we have some getting started tips with song selection guidelines and some pre-writing ideas. Possible resources listed for you here. And we'll talk more in class about what you need to cite and what you don't as far as research that you do. But definitely keep track of where you find information until we can have that conversation in class. Tips here on the essay structure, some things that you need to include in your introduction. There's a sample thesis statement that comes from the critical essay all about that bass that was in your textbook that you were supposed to have read for today, I believe. I'm losing track with all these fog days. Tips for the body of your paper. 3 key elements that analysis papers typically have. Please don't think of this as a paragraph each. It may be multiple paragraphs to take care of some of these things. And you may find that some of these things kind of interweave together in paragraphs. But we want to make sure that we're covering our bases with these. And again, that all of these things serve as support for your thesis statement, which we'll talk about right now. I have several sample thesis statements here that could go for a paper on the Superman song that we've been talking about. So take a second and stop and look at these, read them through, and decide which one you think is the best and which ones maybe are the worst and why. Just go ahead and pause the video while you consider that, and then when you're ready, unpause it and we'll talk. Okay, so we have 5 sample thesis statements here, and I'm hoping that you selected the second one as the strongest, and we'll talk about why after we've talked about the weaknesses with the others. The first one is just really broad. It doesn't say much. It doesn't give us any kind of a clear roadmap to where we're going. in an analysis other than we're going to look at the meaning beneath the surface of these essays or these lyrics. And so way too broad. We need more specifics. The third one is similar, except it expects us to accept this kind of general statement at the beginning that song lyrics tend to have a deeper meaning than expected. Some people might disagree with that. Some people might feel like, in general, song lyrics don't have very much deep meaning in the first place. Other people might really expect deep meaning in song lyrics, and they might be disappointed that songs are shallower than they expect. So that's a pretty debatable statement, and it's okay to have a debatable thesis sometimes. But here, we don't want to undercut ourselves before we even get started by having this questionable statement here. And then the thesis, again, doesn't say much specific, or in terms of giving specifics about where we're going to head with the paper. The fourth one, while it's a true statement that the song does provide a convincing personification of the superhero, again, it could be more specific about what else is happening in the song. This isn't a complete picture of what's happening in that song by Five for Fighting. The last one might seem true if you're looking at the lyrics. We can definitely see references to loneliness and fame in the song, but this is an example of how the research impacts our interpretation. So we looked at the video last week of the songwriter saying that he wasn't famous when he wrote this. He was struggling to be discovered. He was frustrated that he wasn't being heard, and nobody was seeing the art that he was creating. And so this wasn't a song about him being lonely and famous. He wasn't famous yet. We wouldn't know that without doing the research. Okay, so that leaves us with the second one. The Superman metaphor and Five for Fighting song, Superman, provides listeners with an opportunity to connect the superhero experience to their own lives. Okay, so this is more specific, and it talks about the two things that are happening in this song. We have the Superman metaphor running throughout it, but we also have the fact that this comes across, Superman's experience comes across as very relatable to people who might not think that they have much in common with Superman. Okay, so the thesis is really important, and you want to have a good plan for where you're going with your paper right away. Even if you're one of the people that writes the introduction at the end, and you can do that. But you need to have the thesis done, at least at the beginning. And sure, you can tweak it as you go, but you need to have a plan. Okay? Let's get back to the assignment sheet. Here in the body, one of the bullets in the body section, it says, as you're describing what you see in the lyrics, assume that your reader does not share your perspective, cultural knowledge, or musical background and tastes. You need to assume in here that some stuff needs to be explained, so that you're very careful that we don't miss anything. And I'll give you an example with this song, Walking in Memphis. So I included this in the assignment sheet so that you could see how you should type up the lyrics or copy paste them into a poem format. So we have this song, Walking in Memphis by Mark Cohn. And it has all kinds of references to music in it. Memphis is a town that's known for music, especially blues music. And even in just the first verse and the chorus, we can see a bunch of references. But maybe some readers wouldn't pick these things out. Maybe you wouldn't pick these things out because of your age and the exposure that you might not have had to this kind of music. But right from the first sentence, we have "Put on my blue suede shoes." A lot of people are going to recognize that as a reference to an Elvis Presley song, "Blue Suede Shoes," from the 50s. Some readers might not. This is a very important reference. Mark Cohn wants us to be thinking about Elvis. Okay? And so that's something that we would need to point out in our analysis. Okay? There's also just a straightforward story that's happening in this verse. He gets on a plane. He lands in the land of the Delta Blues. Okay? Now this is something else that we need to know about. The Delta Blues is a specific sort of branch of blues music that originated in Memphis, Tennessee. Guitar and harmonica, kind of considered a poor man's music, and very specific to Memphis, where the song is taking place. Okay, so he touches down in the middle of the pouring rain. There might be some significance to that weather. That's something to consider. W.C. Handy is not a name that I knew, but I could tell that it was a name by looking at it. And so I looked it up, and he was an African-American musician, a blues musician, considered the father of the blues. And he had passed away long before Mark Cohn wrote this song. And so he says, W.C. Handy, won't you look down over me? So we get this idea of maybe W.C. Handy in heaven looking down on the songwriter. Then I got a first-class ticket talking about his plane ride, but I'm as blue as a boy can be. And so blue, again, might refer to blues music, but it also can be interpreted to be talking about the mood, because when we say somebody is blue, a lot of times we mean they're depressed, they're worried, they're sad. And so there's an interesting contrast here too. A first-class ticket, well, that implies probably somebody who has quite a bit of money. And then there's this idea of blue or blue collar, which might mean somebody who doesn't have a lot of extra money. And some people have kind of focused on that contrast there. Okay, but you can see that there are lots of things to unpack for us here. Again, in the chorus, he says he's walking with his feet 10 feet off of Beale. When we say somebody was walking with their feet 10 feet off the ground, that's an idiom or a set phrase that we use that means that they're not literally walking with their 10 feet off the ground. It means they're really excited or happy. But he doesn't say my feet 10 feet off of the ground. He says off of Beale. Now, Beale is a street in Memphis where many blues musicians play. So it's associated with blues music. There's even a song called the Beale Street Blues. Okay, and so then he closes the chorus with a question, walking in Memphis, but do I really feel the way I feel? Okay, so I want you to be looking for things that need to be unpacked like that for readers. And some of that you're going to have to do with research. Keep track of what you're finding where. Again, we'll talk next week in class about how you need to cite some of your sources and what maybe doesn't need to be cited. But remember, as you're drafting and working on this, you're looking at what's on the surface, but you've got to have stuff below the surface that you're looking to analyze as well. All right, so how do all these things work together to point us to a bigger message or theme? Pre-writing tips here. As I said before, I think we've got a list of formal academic essay expectations. This is different than the memoir, a different tone, a different purpose, a different audience. And so there are some different expectations. Make sure that you're reading those as you're drafting. Length requirement is 2 to 3 pages minimum. That means we're on to the third page. Even if we don't complete it, we're on to the third page, and probably something along the lines of 4 pages maximum. Obviously, follow quality work standards. The rubric is right here. And so I'm running out of time here. So email me if you have questions. Get started on this. Even though we haven't been able to meet lately, we have to keep moving. And so I'm hoping that the fog will abate, and I will see you all on Tuesday next week. Email me if you have questions. Take care.